In 1980, Northwest women interested in organic and sustainable agriculture came together at the Demeter Conference in Ellensburg, Washington. At least one woman there said she found her voice there and realized she could be a leader. She has been leading and making history ever since. Today we will hear the stories of 6 women who were either at the conference or wanted to be. These women have accomplished remarkable things in the last 41 years and are major contributors to organic agriculture as we know it today. First, we'll have Lynn Cody, who's currently with the Organic Produce Wholesaler Coalition, and then Lynn Thornton of Cloud Mountain Farm and Northwest Ag Business Center, then Margaret Clark, who's recently retired from the National Tropical Botanical Gardens and served on the first National Organic Standards Board, Gretchen Hoyt of Alm Hill Gardens, myself, Diane Dexter, formerly of Charlie's Produce, and Ann Schwartz, Blue Heron Farm. Thank you very much, and I'll give it over to Lynn.
Okay. Well, so I decided when I got the notice in the mail about the Demeter conference that I would try really hard to go. And this was a very difficult thing for me because I had no car, I had no phone, I was living in the middle of nowhere, but yet I felt this draw. So I decided to reach out to some people who were a little bit further up the Willamette Valley from me in Corvallis, who I heard were going, and we all got in the back of a van with not even seats in it, just the back portion of a cargo van, and drove up. And it was a long trip for us, but we got to know each other very well on the way. And then when I got there, I found so many really inspiring women. And I had been put in a proposal to give a short, a presentation that was called Images of Ourselves as Rural Women. And the idea was that you would, I brought a few readings and poems and things like that to get things started, but really it didn't take much. Once I told people the premise of the gathering, it just took off, and everyone was very, very eager to talk about what their own version of rural life was about. So that was an inspirational opportunity for me, because it gave me a chance to come up with an idea, make it happen, and see that other people would actually go along with it. So time went on, and gradually I became more of a leader in Tilth itself. And when it was time for Oregon to split off, because we were getting to have different state laws, by that time I was a leader in Oregon who was ready to help write the Oregon state law and move forward with creating our own version of Oregon Tilth. There were many inspirational women who were also working in Oregon, which I had the great pleasure to work with for many, many years, and still interact with quite a few of them to this day. So Diane asked me to explain what we've done that's made a difference in the intervening years. So when I look back over that, in one way it makes me very exhilarated, in another way it makes me very tired, because it was a long haul. I mean, working for all these years on one thing is something that is unusual in this world these days, where everybody flits around and does different things. But for me, I stuck with working with organic for all these years, which gave me an opportunity to function at a leadership level in many respects. So as I mentioned, I was a founder of Oregon Tilth, and that became a large certification agency. I was a founder of OMRI, the Organic Materials Review Institute, which is in Eugene because I was in Eugene. And I was a founder of the Oregon Organic Coalition, and I played a very big role in the Organic Produce Wholesalers Coalition. Lots of leadership opportunities in all of these organizations. In addition, I was a co-author of the Oregon Organic Law in 1989. And because of that, was asked by Kathleen Merrigan to participate as a writer and thinker of when we were creating the Organic Foods Production Act, which is the basis for the regulatory system for organic as we know it today. I also had the opportunity, which was super fun, to teach at the Mediterranean Institute of Organic Agriculture, which is for 15 years. I went there every spring and taught a short course on the system used to regulate organic, including certification and regulatory systems. The idea there was that it would help people from other countries who did not have established regulatory systems or certification systems set up, and it would give them the skills to become the leaders to do that very thing. And since I've done it for so long, I now see some of my students as very high up in the EU and running certification systems all over the Mediterranean and doing a lot of practical organic work as well, which is very, very, I feel very happy when I get to think about that. Let's see. I also, of course, have been running my own consulting business since 1982. And I started doing consulting because I had been a farmer, but unfortunately I overworked my right arm and had to stop farming. So my idea was that I would help other people gain the knowledge that they needed to farm themselves. And that turned out to be a pretty successful model. And it morphed into a lot more policy work and bigger kind of consulting about production issues, such as through the OPWC, the Organic Produce Wholesalers Coalition. So now I am basically working at that on those same ideas, but with a lot of input into the National Organic Standards Board, et cetera. So those are some of the things that I've done. Many hours spent at meetings, many hours doing accounting, all the mundane stuff of life as well. So the next question was, what have been your biggest challenges? I think for me, overall, the biggest challenge has been learning to speak controversial ideas, even though my heart is pounding. People somehow have this idea, or many people tell me they have the impression of me that I can just get up there and say whatever I think and just give speeches and really give them hell, you know, but that's not the case. It's difficult. It's hard to think of the right thing to say. It's hard to think of the right way to say it. And it's hard to actually get it out when you're feeling like, oh, this is not going to be a popular option. But in spite of all that, I do it anyway. And so, but it has not been easy. I also have, I know that for me, another challenge definitely has been the work-life balance. I am a very driven person. I am very intense. I am also a mother, and all throughout all this intensity and having this business in my house, I raised a son who's now almost 30 years old. So that finding that balance was difficult. I felt like I never ever, not even one day, did it correctly. Did it the way I wanted to. I was always it was always a difficult pull for me. And then finally, I'll just say another thing that's hard for me is just staying asleep at night when my brain is just going so fast. It just never shuts off. So that's always been a challenge for me too, just on a personal level. So that's about it.
Thank you, Lynn. That was great. So next, I'd like Cheryl Thornton is a founder of Cloud Mountain Farm in Everson, Washington, and is now working with the Northwest Ag Business Center. And Cheryl, I'd like you to tell your story.
Thank you. It's great to see everybody here. Yeah, I will piggyback on some of what Lynn said too. But when the Demeter conference was first organized, I was so excited because it was all women. And excuse me, I grew up an only child and went to an all girls private school. So I've been around women all my life and feel that women are the future and the present and the past of this world. So when I heard that this was all women, it was like, sign me up immediately. The other thing that I had forgotten about is that all the men at the conference did all the childcare. And so at that point, it was all of us getting together to be who we are and to share ideas and do what we felt was important without the child always there. And the men were stellar at it. And it was really great to have them do that. Also, the premise that agriculture was not just men's work. Women play a huge role in agriculture, and so to celebrate that and be with other women in agriculture was just really inspiring. And I, at that point, led a cooperative marketing workshop, and I'm still leading cooperative marketing workshops 41 years later. Um, so, um, but at any rate, I'll get to that in just a minute. But yeah, co-owner of Cloud Mountain Farm, and our focus here, we had three main things that we did and still do to some extent, but the focus was to grow the best tree fruits and food that we could, given the land that we had. We have 20 acres at Cloud Mountain. And also to educate. That was a very high component of what both Tom and I felt was important to do, and to build community. So if I get into the growing part, we in the past have grown tree fruits mainly, and mainly fruit trees, any type of stone fruit, apple, palm fruits, and so on. Garlic for a while, miscellaneous vegetables. We were trying everything we could at that point just to make a living. It was difficult back then. It was hard. We also had small children with no money and trying to figure out how to make it work. Part of, though, I think what we felt was important was to educate people about what we were doing. And so we also had a plant nursery because we were growing our own trees, fruit trees, and so on. So we started out really early on doing workshops for the public on growing, not just growing fruit trees, but growing food, and felt that that was really an important component for people to understand what we were doing here in our community. Where we live in the Nooksack Valley has been traditionally a lot of people staying in the same place. Tom and I were new here, and we were branded newcomers, and it was very difficult to sometimes interface with the community, being one, young, and two, both of us involved in growing. So we felt it was really important to educate people about what we were doing and why. We did a bunch of farmer series working with other farms. We also did a lot of work with chefs and wholesale buyers, because that's where we were selling our products to. So felt that that was important, that they understand what we were doing here to grow what we were selling there. The other thing that we have been involved in is building community, and that is working, being part of school districts. I've been on the Nooksack Valley School Board for 26 years. Some people say I should get off, and I'm done, but it's still something that inspires me. Not only working with schools and children and teachers and parents, but farm to school and growing. So I kind of wore many different hats. I was a farmer, I was a school board member, I was a parent. And so it was really kind of fun to be able to be part of that community. Schools are a huge part of local communities. So feeling like I wanted to reach out to that group. Working with a local chamber of commerce, felt it was important that the community, that we participate as well as a business. Most people did not back then see agriculture and farms as businesses necessarily. So educating the community that yes, in fact, we are a business and we do make those kinds of decisions to help the community. And we do also contribute to the community that way. We also organized for 30 years a fruit festival where we had many people come and taste all the different kinds of varieties. We did a lot of varietal trials here of what works best, what doesn't work best, so that we could help people learn and grow their own. So we had a fruit festival here for 30 years. We would have over 2,000 people show up for a weekend. And it was quite an event. It was really fun. It became kind of one of the go-to events every October, which was really humbling in a lot of ways. People would come to us and say, "Are you doing it again, right?" And we tried to make it fun, but it was really focused on education. I also worked with developing the Bellingham Farmers Market years ago with Gretchen Hoyt, who was involved as well. And tried it once. It didn't go so well because the city did not have infrastructure set up at that point to support us. We had to move every week. That was not fun at a different location in Bellingham. So it kind of went down. It didn't work very well. Another group started up years later, and which now we have sold to the farmers market. Also involved with the Puget Sound Food Hub and getting that going. So that creates opportunities for many other growers to participate and for market development. So hence my back to cooperative marketing. 40 years ago, here we are still supporting cooperative marketing ventures, or I am in the Puget Sound Food Hub. So I would say challenges are, things are changing, things are different, and it's still the same in a lot of ways. We're still doing it 40 years, 41 years later, I'm still at it. And just as passionate, I think, as Lynn said, just thinking about all the opportunities that are there. And so thank all of the women that have helped inspire me through the years and all of you for listening. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. That was great. So next we have Margaret Clark. Margaret was one of the first people to serve on the National Organic Standards Board. She was she created one of the first supermarkets to carry organic in the state, town and country markets. And she's a lawyer and lives in Hawaii and works with the National Tropical Botanical Gardens. So Margaret, welcome, Margaret, and I'd love to hear your story.
Okie doke. Hi. Thinking about where I was when the Demeter conference happened, I think it was not long after I'd moved to Seattle from Northern California. And I'd been a social worker, psychiatric social worker, and I didn't want to much do that anymore. I ended up making my living gardening. And I had in the past, had a vegetable garden. And so my first connection with Tilth, I think, was volunteering at the Good Shepherd Center, which was kind of home to Seattle Tilth. And I did that for quite some time and actually lived with a couple of those founders, Carl and Regina. So it was kind of around that time that the Demeter conference happened. I had been working with women's groups before that. And on some level, that's been a thread through my life. The other thread through my life is I've always seemed to have one foot in one thing and the other foot in another. So all those years of gardening, there was landscape gardening and plants, and there were, ornamental plants, whatever, design aspects. And then there was food. So people, and one would say, oh, well, she's kind of a landscaper. And the other would say, oh, she's a food gardener. So that was that. I also had foot in two worlds for quite a while because I was a grower and I sold to wholesale, mostly salad and herbs, specialty products. And then I started working in the produce industry at Charlie's Produce. And I did that for several years. And then I moved over to Town and Country, because by then I was living on Bainbridge. During that time, Tilts had a certification program. It was pretty small. I became involved in a group of people that met in order to get the Department of Agriculture involved in starting an organic certification program. At that time, there was only one other state program, that was Texas. And so it came to a time when we went to Olympia and we testified in front of, the legislature, and we got our bill and it passed. And then we hired Miles McAvoy, which, considering his long career since, seems like it was a good choice. And somewhere in there, as I was chairing this advisory board for the Washington program, the retail end of things was taking off with Town and Country. After being laughed at and told that organic was a dirty word, I eventually prevailed on my manager. And one day he just said, okay, so if it's organic, you can label it organic. And I would attribute my success there to several very vocal customers who really helped make that happen. And they could come in and say to me, what's organic on the shelf before this labeling? And then he kind of jumped on the bandwagon and made some big purchases over the summer. He got all his lettuce from Olympia, from organic farmers, and people really appreciated it. And people told me, I moved here because of this store, stuff like that. So, and now the organic is a big part of all 5 of those stores that Town and Country owns and runs. And I've been thanked multiple times for having nudged in that direction. I was also involved in the Grange a little bit on the island, and we had some events honoring our local farmers that were real fun. We had old slides from that had been taken of farmers some 40, 50 years before, and they were pretty wonderful. So what else? So then I was appointed to the National Organic Standards Board, and that was quite an adventure. We agreed that we wanted to visit farms at all the locations and meet around the country so that we could get a maximum amount of input on the standards from organic farmers. And I don't know, trying to remember Marty Strange, somebody once likened working with organic farmers as like being, when you keep cows, there's an expression for this one cow that keeps taking off on its own. They call them the bunch cutter. It just cuts out from the bunch. And sometimes it seemed like working with organic farmers, both in Washington and nationally, was like working with a bunch of bunch cutters. you know, personality wise, you get some very strong opinions and clashes. And I remember one day after a committee meeting, I chaired a accreditation committee, and I was just dumbfounded because these two people had monopolized a lot of the meeting with a conflict between the two of them. And I can't remember what the substance was. I guess I felt like the substance wasn't where it was at, actually, and with them. And I remember thinking, I just want to lock these two guys into a room together, you know? It's like, and I've had that experience since. So it's always interesting to hear people report group dynamics, and some of it is definitely gender, I think, and it's not exclusively one or the other does these things, but and I'm certainly not always the best participant in groups. I tend to blurt a lot, but I get impatient to have the right things said, and so that I have to say it. But boy, it was very interesting. We traveled around the country. I was on a rice farm. I was, you know, meat packing, you name it. We went there, and it was a lovely time to meet exceptional people. And some of the people I served on that board with were exceptional. I spent a lot of time with Nancy Taylor, who has passed away since then, which is sad. Anyway, so that was that. And as I was a 3-year appointee, so as my tenure came to an end, I knew I wasn't going to just go back and just do straight produce, because the policy part had always appealed to me. And while I was still on the board, I was still on the board. Yeah. I got involved in the GMO issue, and where, if any, there was a place for that with organic. And I ended up working with Margaret Mellon from the Union of Concerned Scientists, who was an attorney, biologist. And we wrote a white paper for the Organic Trade Association. And that turned into a position that organics did take. We couldn't control contamination, but we could control usage. So that's where that came out. That was a tough one. And I now live in a rural part of Kauai on the southwest side. And I am not exactly retired, but kind of retired from the garden. I did a lot of work with seeds, seed bank, and writing 5-year reviews for Fish and Wildlife Service of endangered Hawaiian plants, which, if you want to look at something fascinating sometime, look at Hawaii's endangered plants. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. That was great. And now I'd like to introduce Gretchen Hoyt, who's been part of Alm Hill Farms since its founding, and one of the founders of Alm Hill Farms and many other things. So Gretchen, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us your story, I'd appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I've been farming for 50 years. I think I might never quit, you know. It's kind of scary how long it's been. The Demeter conference for me was part of a progression. I'd been doing quite a few survey conferences with our local cooperative extension on agriculture on a small scale, the kind of things where you talk about beekeeping and what weeds can overwinter. We didn't do much on philosophy or policy or what it was like to be farming. And so when this opportunity came, I jumped on the chance to help get this going, chance to connect with women in a bigger area. I was especially interested in what it was like for other women to farm with children. I found that really hard. And then, you know, there was all that heavy work that we had to do. And how did everyone manage to do it all? I think that for me, a lot of my personal attributes have been helpful for the future of food and agriculture, even though it was a very personal thing. We were going back to the land hippies from the 60s, that whole, eat a lot of peaches and find Jesus on your own kind of ideas. Because we were branching out, we had to find creative solutions to a lot of unique problems. For instance, for us, the first year we had a berry crop. We were originally the first crop raspberry growers. Canners are paying 19 cents a pound, and my pickers needed 15 cents a pound. That's not going to work. So we took the back out of our Studebaker and filled it with berries and went to Pike Place Market. Came home with money in our hand, and never looked back. We were willing to try experimental methods in order to succeed. I remember here came winter and we had no money. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So I started making Christmas wreaths out of the greens from the woods on our farm, and that grew into a $10,000 business that only took a month to do. I really had an attitude that I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed. And going to Pike Place Market was a real test, because we'd have to get up at 5 to load the vehicle, then drive to the market for 2 hours. It was a 10-hour market, and then a 2.5 drive home, and then get up the next day and continue farming. I think that it was really helpful to be in my community, to do things besides farming, because we were considered those hippies on the hill for a long, long time. And then now I feel like we're probably respected members of the community. We were at one time grand marshals of our local little parade. So I think all those things that were my personal attributes are really important too. On the public side, I worked for years on conferences with Cooperative Extension, with Pike Place Market, with other markets. We helped form 3 out of the 4 Bellingham markets that failed. I taught organic agriculture for a few years at our community college. I was on the board of Pike Place Market as the token farmer for 8 years. Then I chaired the farm committee of that board. I've always been an advocate for immigrant rights, because I work with immigrants a lot. I taught Spanish to English speakers, and I taught English to Spanish speakers for a while. I helped form the original Untitled Chapter in Whatcom County. I've been working in our local food bank. I still farm, and my main community activity now is to manage a community garden in our little town of Everson. And then we have a donation section that we donate to our food bank. For me, some of the real challenges, big challenges for me then are still here, but some of them are better. It was always hard to do the physical work of farming. I think I'm a strong woman, and I think my health is good now because I did all that hard work then. But I now look all over for any cart, any way to not have to bend to do my work, use the front edge of the tractor to haul, or a cart, or anything. And if it comes to putting that machinery on the tractor, I don't do it alone. I get somebody to help me. I think raising children on the farm was a challenge. There was not a lot of opportunity to do daycare. And actually Cheryl and I traded afternoons of childcare so that we had a little bit of time. And yet now there are all kinds of childcare opportunities, and women hire people to watch their kids, and there's preschool, and that's a great change that's happened. I feel like being an organic grower, when we started, people thought that we were hobby farmers, that it was just a little game we were playing. But now, you know, organic agriculture is a real mainstream idea. We're the fastest growing section of agriculture. And there are journals for people like Growing for Market to help them. There's research now into what to do for cover crops and which kind of fertilizers do what. And all that has really helped, I think, so that we don't have to work quite as hard on all those things. And I also think that the role of women was harder in our days because this was a man's industry. And you were probably, if you're going to be working with on farming, you were going to do the books, or you might feed the cows. You were in the helper role. But today, the roles of women in everywhere, in government and in business, and have all changed. The Me Too movement is helping us work through a difficult issue that's, you know, it's going on, but it's getting better. And we're raising the children of the next generation. And I think that they've watched us be women who have been in strong positions and have power. And that's all going to help them do it for the future. Insights for me, I used to try to do whatever a man could do, and I hurt myself doing that. And so I understand now that my body has limits, and I try to work smarter instead of harder. You know, there were some really big problems in agriculture when we were starting. I remember one year it rained so hard that the berry growers had to put tank tracks on their tractors to get their machines through the field to pick their berries. And so our organic berries just rotted right there in the field. But we decided that, oh, I remember, yeah, the blueberries came on really strong from all that rain. And so, yeah, there's the solution. Botrytis was a huge problem when it mutated. It made everything mold so much faster. And so we saw if we're going to continue to be organic growers, we're going to have to figure out a solution. So we went on a tour in Europe of the tunnels that was brand new. People were just experimenting with them. But we came home believers and covered our raspberries with tunnels. So there's all kinds of ways that things look kind of impossible, and then something happens, and there's a solution. I used to be pretty militant in my views and ideals and kind of push my ideals. Yeah, organic's the way. Yeah, we're important. We women are important, that sort of thing. And I've changed that attitude. I think that it takes a long time to make changes. And we're talking about big changes in every possible way. And I think we need to go more slowly. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, you know, you have to take step by step by step, because if you hurry up and try to do things before their time has come, you create a backlash. And, you know, we're still working on what's going on with Black Lives Matters and that sort of thing, trying to push that new idea. I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Gretchen. That was great. Anne wanted to go last, so that makes me next. I'm the moderator and one of the speakers. I wasn't at the Demeter conference in 1980. I wanted to be, but was not able to. I was working for an ag consulting firm and living in Oregon at the time, and a few years later ended up working for a grower co-op in Salem, Oregon. And then in 1986, I came to work for Farmers Wholesale Cooperative, working for that grower cooperative, and that was an organic one. And that was my dream, was to work with organic growers. And my idea, I went to college and majored in land use planning because I grew up on the outskirts of Portland, which was being rapidly developed. Farmland was being developed all the time. And so when I got out of college, I volunteered for Thousand Friends of Oregon to try to save agricultural land. But a lot of the farmers didn't want to be saved. They wanted to be able to sell their land for the best possible price. So instead of becoming a land use planner, which I didn't want to work for the government, I decided to that maybe providing a living for farmers might be a better way to save agricultural land than legislating it. And so I ended up working for 2 different grower co-ops. The one in Olympia was Farmers Wholesale Cooperative, which I mentioned. And when that business changed in 1989, I went to work for Charlie's Produce and worked there for 30 years. And I managed, so Farmers Wholesale, our label was Farmers Own Organic. And that label came to Charlie's. Charlie bought that label in 1991, and then I managed it. And so I think I ended up working in the wholesale produce industry as sort of the organic person at Charlie's. And I sort of thought, what were my challenges? And I was thinking, well, besides racism, or besides homophobia, besides sexism, the produce industry is quite the male organization. And so it was a challenge and kind of a blessing to work there for so many years, because I really learned what it was like to make your way through a system that didn't support you really. And when I started at Charlie's, organics was definitely a 4-letter word. It was not supported, and Charlie himself really supported it. And so that's how we made our way. And then we got customers like Town and Country Markets that were really demanding it and asking for it. And the market grew because of all the work of people really wanting it. And so my job at Charlie's was to work with growers and to bring them into the Farmer's Own brand. And so I was really privileged to be able to work for a company that could pay the growers well, and I had the support to work with growers and teach them how to pack to sell to a wholesaler, and my whole goal was to get more local organics into retail stores. And so I think that we weren't direct marketers, we weren't working with the farmers markets, and I think that's a great place, but our focus was the retail markets of Washington State and beyond. And Charlie's was able to, because we were able to do the brand Farmer's Own, Charlie's could pay the growers and could buy the boxes ahead of time. And we made commitments to growers on what we would buy, so that they had the security of knowing they'd have an income if they planted a certain crop. And we couldn't say exactly what the price would be, but we did our best to make it work and considered them part of our team, the growers. So that I'm proud that business is still going on, and that it's the organic industry has really grown. And I helped. I was also on some of the committees where we were doing the tri-state coalition of organic certifiers, and I served on the statewide organic advisory board for a few years. And that was really helpful because we helped, before the national organic law, we helped standardize some of the rules and regulations between Oregon, Washington, and California. So those were exciting times too. I think I think it's one of those things you can never see where you're going to be in the future exactly, and I think I would have been, I'm always surprised that I ended up working at Charlie's for 30 years, because I would have never imagined myself doing that. But all in all, it was able to be part of building something really great, the organic industry. And I'm proud of that, and proud of been able to work with growers for all that time. I think that some of the insights I would have is that that you can't hear somebody when you're yelling at them. A person just can't hear what you have to say. They that a better way to get your message across is with humor and a compassion for the other person. And so I think there's a lot that we can share with each other, and I guess that's all I have to say. So thank you. And Anne, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Well, thanks again, Diane, for organizing and orchestrating this. And there's some faces on the screen I haven't seen in a long time. You know who you are. It's just really great to see you. Yeah, Diane posed some questions for us, and one of them was what inspired you to get engaged? And I was in Pullman at Washington State University studying animal science in the mid-70s, and the Palouse was experiencing some of the worst soil erosion on the planet. The Palouse was regularly losing 40 to 50 tons of topsoil per acre per year. And in my ag econ classes, they were telling us why the value of farmland kept going up. And the more that I learned, the more it just seemed like the future of agriculture. I just didn't understand it. I didn't come from an ag background, but I came from an activist background. And the more that I learned about our agriculture, the more I realized that I really didn't want to be a part of it. Between the pesticides and what was happening to the environment, as I learned about livestock production and witnessed what I call concentration camps for chickens, pigs, and cattle, I became a vegetarian. Being a vegetarian in the middle of an animal science program in Eastern Washington in the 70s was not an easy place or thing to do. When I started coming to TILF meetings, like our keynote said, I found my people. I was really inspired by the work of coming together and identifying problems. And Lynn, Cody, and I worked together for years. And just the opportunity to meet such dedicated, inspired, hardworking women, especially, was something that has kept me going for all these years. And it is wonderful to look back at 40 years of activism and see how many changes we have been successful at making. Another one of the questions that we were asked to talk about is, what have we done that have made a difference in the future of food and agriculture? And for me, I became a volunteer. In addition to being a workaholic farmer, I volunteered in our local community as an EMT firefighter. And for a long time, I've sat on anywhere from 3 to 5 different boards at any given moment. I believe in the power of collaboration. And I have just benefited so much from working across all these different organizations, the Washington Sustainable Food and Farming Network, Cascade Harvest Coalition, Washington State Farmers Market Association, WSU Extension, the College of Ag, the Center for Sustaining Ag and Natural Resources. I'm also active locally. For many years, I have served on our regional Northwest Ag Research Foundation. I was the first woman to serve on that board in its 60-year history, as well as the first organic farmer. And, I've been a lone voice for a long time in a room full of big guys. And last year, Skagitonians to Preserve Farmland did several features of area growers. And they contacted a few of the 3rd and 4th generation large farmers in the Valley about my story. And one of the, 3rd generation largest farm in the Skagit Valley actually said in this article that I changed how he farmed. I couldn't believe that he said that publicly. You know, for those of you that know Skagit Ag, John Roos in the Washington Bulb, you know, he basically said, I'm the reason they use cover crops. That just floored me. I just couldn't believe it. So, you know, we really have no idea who we inspire, when we inspire. You know, I think Diane was spot on. We have to be full of humor and being humble. You know, we just had massive flooding on my farm and my raspberries are still underwater a week later. 35 years ago, I had a raspberry crop that was underwater for 3 days. At the peak of the harvest, it died in 48 hours from Phytophthora root rot. And now I'm looking at a whole new planting going, you know what, I could hit July and this whole field could just die in 48 hours. So, you know, the challenges never go away. And the only way we're going to get through it is by collaborating and working together. And it has brought so many gifts into my life. It has so helped me to survive, both as a farm and as a woman and as an activist. All of these things were just really, really critical. One of the things that I think made an enormous difference was collaborating with the Washington Sustainable Food and Farming Network. We formed a very active partnership with the administration of the College of Ag at Washington State University. We developed a 10-point letter of mutual commitment, and we met quarterly for 3 years and addressed every one of our issues. And it led to many definitive changes in the university. And it brought us respect. It brought us a seat at the table. And it really helped to solidify the foundation of the Center for Sustaining Ag and Natural Resources, which is a shining star at Washington State University and is encouraged and supported a lot of faculty to explore their own passion in organic and biological systems. Some of the biggest challenges, certainly volunteering for so many organizations had a huge opportunity cost in terms of me not being at the farm. And just the act of physically attending hundreds of meetings, especially traveling to Washington, DC. And the people here that have spent time in Washington, DC know how intense that world is. I remember coming back from a week in DC and having to sit on the tractor for a week just to digest what all had happened, you know, and my friends that were there in the thick of it all the time, I just couldn't imagine how they could carry that intense of a load day after day after day. I got to come home and sit on a disc and go around in circles, and that really helped a lot. You know, I chaired a national committee to develop organic livestock standards. And I remember, I'm a kind of a short woman, I'm 5'3" and shrinking. And I remember in so many meetings, I felt like it was my nose to a belt buckle attached to a big farmer. And I just used to talk about nose to belt buckle because that's what it felt like. And it was really tough. And thank God for the women who held each other up through those really intense times of, you know, making testimony before the Senate Ag Committee or testifying at a National Organic Standards Board meeting. These were hard things to do, and we couldn't have done it without supporting each other. I mentioned this in my other talk this morning, but I want to say it again because I think it is so cogent. One of the legislators that we worked with to define organic in Washington State helped us over the years. His name was Ken Jacobson, and he used to talk about the need to cultivate persistence, patience, and passion. And that is the key: persistence, patience, and passion. And coming back and doing it again, and retrenching and reevaluating and coming back and do it again. And thinking about our biggest obstacles and how we tackle it, you know, organic farmers are still a minority, and we need to resist the tendency to get into too many different silos. We have to work together. We can't have 20 different little sectors of organics doing their own things. We need to work together. We really need to work with all the generations. There's too much work to do to let the passion of the youngers miss the wisdom of the elders. So I think it's really important that we continue this work in a multi-generational attitude. We need to work with next gen farmers. We need to work with historically marginalized members of the Black, Indigenous, and colored farmers and food activists and reformers. We live in such a time of challenges where the stakes have never been higher and the rhetoric and anger has never been worse. You know, I think all of us that are, you know, the gray beards or the gray hairs of this room kind of all realize that the mess we're in now is worse than the messes that we've seen in our entire lives. And so I guess I'll just end by saying we have to work together. The challenges are too great, and this collaboration and stretching our arms out, I think is going to be so critical to continue to address our challenges of our day.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. That's a perfect segue to a next question I wanted to ask each of the speakers, which was, what needs to be done now? What's next? And maybe just a brief, I think, Anne, you did a great job of sharing what your perspective is on that. And so I'll just start with you, Lynn, and see if you could tell us what you feel like is the next step.
Well, to me, the next step is trying to look fearlessly at the parts of our system, organic and otherwise, that are not as wholesome and carefully thought through as they need to be, and to try to, like many other of the speakers have emphasized, I think learning skills to work together is absolutely essential. It's going to be important for big issues like climate change, smaller issues that are at the local level, every single one. It all hinges on being able to listen and to understand and then speak back with compassion. So to me, that's basically what it boils down to, is trying to listen and be compassionate and understanding with each other. It'll work for every single challenge before us, personal all the way up to worldwide. So that, to me, that's where I'd like to focus in the remaining years that I am here working on the planet.
Thank you, Lynn. Cheryl, do you have anything you want to add?
Wow, I don't know how to follow all of you powerful women. Pretty awesome. I agree. The divisiveness and the issues that face us today are way more than I could have ever imagined, that I've seen in the past. And so everything that Lynn said, everything Anne said, working together, I see the next steps as certainly, at least for us here, and what we do is helping to inspire and train those young farmers. We've had an internship program here where I've seen so many young women come through here that are powerful speakers and ready to go, and to inspire them to go out and have a voice is, I think, something that this society needs anyway. But the other thing I would say is that I've always had a passion of working with the public and consumers and having them understand how food's grown, why it's important. But food seems to be a common denominator for all of us. We all need it. And so how can we best help each other understand that and where it comes from? I've seen it be the equalizer in our community in so many different ways. So I think that next step of helping us all work together, understand it, communication seems to be something that is lacking. And so that's what I hope to see in the next step.
Great, thank you. Margaret, what do you feel as next steps? You need to unmute yourself.
There you go. I think being a retailer was a really good opportunity to change minds without directly trying to do that. And partly because food is what they call heavily cathected. People have a lot of emotional connections around food, and really good food like Jerry Malco's peaches and things like that were just really effective at reaching people. The other thing I was going to echo that was said, I think Anne and Lynn both said sort of is, somebody recently was speaking about how to talk to anti-vax people. And what they said was that it doesn't, and I find this was true with therapy, doing therapy with people too, is that it doesn't, you don't get very far head on or yell, as Diane said, yelling. If you can find something in common, something that you share, and like if it was a mediation session, for instance, as the person sort of lays out their view of things, you're going to pick up values or interests, concerns, things that are sort of really motivating for that person that you share, that you can share. And that can be a place to start. And sometimes once some of those needs or emotional needs or whatever are addressed, it's easier for them to let go of some of the positioning kinds of stuff that we can get into. So people say, you know, facts don't matter. You can throw as many facts at a situation as you want, and they will not change people's minds when they're locked in. So experience that is immediate, community-based, neighbor-based, friend-based, food-based. In Hawaii, you don't have an event without food. Somebody I know was going to have a volunteer appreciation day, and it's like, well, what are they going to do for food? Oh, no food. I'm like, right. That'll go over big. That's really appreciating your volunteers. Anyway,
Great.
food.
Thank you, Margaret. Gretchen.
Well, I think we have, where to start? There's a lot of stuff going on right now. I think climate change is a big problem. And we're sort of, by our very jobs we do, are addressing that issue. And so, as Anne has experienced and we're experiencing in our little town, we're in our third big event this year, somewhat based on climate change. And it's a hard thing to work on. I just feel like we are a service to the world by our very fact that we're organic growers. I think that in Washington State, we live in a little liberal bubble here. When you talk to people from around the world, there are lots of other ways people view each other. I think that we're basically a spiritually immature nation. We don't have, we just haven't gone very far thinking about moral ideas, even though we claim to be such a religious country. Especially our privileged elite people are I hate to say white males, but some of all of those are the cause of all the racism and the sexism and the conservatism and the violence in all these areas. I'm a real believer in working at the grassroots. If you can have your little corner of the world in order, it's helping the whole picture. There's the idea of the 100th monkey. Transcendental meditationers say, if you get enough people meditating, the whole world is going to raise up in spirituality. And then, of course, there's the tipping point. It's a wonderful idea that if enough people get started doing something, it's pretty soon everybody's doing it. Look at saddle shoes back then. And so that, I really believe the ultimate solution would be to evolve spiritually.
Well, thank you all. I wanted to thank Barbara Snyder, who's here with us, for being one of the organizers of the Demeter Conference in 1980. And Margaret McCrae was also there, and she's with us today. Thank you all. We have about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to share. We're a small enough crowd. I think we can do that. Anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Lindsay Detroit has raised her hand.
Oh, Lindsay.
Hi,
Go
Diane.
ahead. Hi.
It's wonderful to see you on this, all of you. I don't know all of you, but those I do know have been a tremendously powerful influence on someone like myself, who is new to the state, but also working in agriculture as a woman. I work both sides of the mountains in Washington state, and I see a wide diversity of attitudes towards organic farming. And just in the 23 years I've been at WSU working with farmers around the state, it's been remarkable to see how organic is no longer a dirty word. Even in, there's still folks who see it in a very negative light, but it's become much more accepted and not something to fight against like it always was. And like Anne said, you don't realize who you're influencing and how you're influencing people by just being that kind of osmotic effect in the things you do and the things you say. And I've witnessed this not because of what I've done, but because of what people like you have done. So I thank you for enabling people like me to come into agriculture as women and be accepted and be respected. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I think that all of us here are pretty amazing people, and I know several other people that weren't speaking that are on the call who've done pretty amazing things, and I want to thank you for that. And I think that, you know, the one thing I have always sensed when I've been working with other women and is that we have a commonality that, you know, as I say, I wasn't at that conference in 1980, but I've certainly felt the camaraderie of other women who were there and who are just working in agriculture, and it really is sustaining and supporting. And even though I'm not a farmer and never was, I certainly appreciate all the hard work that's gone in and into the industry. So thank you very, very much. So thank you all.
Thank you,
appreciate your
Diane, for
time.
putting this
Thank you,
together.
Diane, for getting it together.